Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our first broker webinar. My name is Lauren Stacy. I manage the Channel Partner Program here at Catalyst Power alongside my teammate, Amy Touchstone. Today, we're going to talk about the Connecticut NRES auction. We figured it was good timing with the next one coming up quickly in the fall. But first, I am going to introduce our speakers today. Today we have our VP of Operations, Neil Hayden. We have our EVP of Development, Bill Kinnery. And we have our CEO at Catalyst Power, Gabe Phillips. So NRES auction. Today we're going to talk about some key facts about the program, what you can expect with the process. We're going to talk about how to identify a prospect. We're going to talk about commissions. Everyone wants to know about commissions. We have milestone payments now. So we're going to definitely cover that. Gabe is going to bring you through some slides, and then we left a lot of time at the end for questions. We get a lot of frequently asked questions, so we're going to cover most of those that come up. And, as always, if we don't cover something or if you have questions that come up afterwards, please feel free to reach out to us. So I am going to pass it along to Gabe.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to start off just introducing the program in case you all are not familiar. It's the non-residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program. It's a statewide initiative. It's basically structured to incentivize in front of the meter solar installation and the focus, the size segment, the customer segment we focus on is the non-residential property owner. And you can build an asset on site, monetize it outside of the customer's fence under a contract with the utility, whoever their interconnecting utility is. So key dates, are the submission that just passed in February, and now we're getting our ducks in a row for the next upcoming September submission date. These auctions have been going on for a couple of years. They've morphed a little bit in structure and regulatory pieces and puzzle pieces, but in general, they've stayed pretty consistent, and it will continue through 2027. At first, they had a different quantity of auctions per year. Now we're at one auction every 6 months, and the dates have been roughly similar each year, around Q1, and then again around September 1. Eligibility criteria from our perspective is more around what we think is worth everyone's time. And so businesses with a minimum of 25,000 square feet of usable roof space has been what we've just found to be a relevant amount of space that is worth everyone's effort. That doesn't mean that we couldn't look at something that's smaller if there's multiple sites. But that said, the time and effort involved in negotiating an agreement is just part of the upfront sunk cost. Obviously, the property has to be located in Connecticut. And we have found that the economics are best when we are looking at sub 200 kilowatt size systems. In that case, you are subjected to a random selection of whether you get picked up in any of these auctions for an NRES contract. But the pricing is most lucrative there. And on the competitive auction front, we've seen that most of the projects that win are located in some sort of a special incentive zone. So distressed municipality where you get a bid preference, so you can get treated as if your price was lower, but actually collect a higher price, or have some additional investment tax credit per the IRA, like an energy community or USDA grant eligibility. Excuse me. So there are different ways that we think are relevant for you all to consider how to identify a key prospect. For this product in particular, we think of it as technical qualifications and then the qualitative qualifications. On a technical front, obviously any commercial client looking to take advantage of their unused roof space or their stranded asset to get some extra monthly income is key. Technically, it's best if they own their property and or rent, but if they rent, there's got to be a long-term ownership, a long-term access component to their lease. So it's usually best we found and most efficient if they own the property and occupy it. Now, when we talk about sufficient roof space or usable roof space for solar, that involves a shading analysis, a lack of obstructions, just generally a lack of activity going on the roof. And then it's got to be physically ready to host solar. So there, the condition, in terms of its age is key, because warranty eligibility is an important factor for everybody involved. But most importantly, is it in good condition? Has it been resurfaced? Is the material something that requires resurfacing or requires remediation? And if so, there are options for us to assist with that. But the out-of-the-box usability of the roof is very important. And then obviously the building structure itself needs to be able to support the dead load of solar, which is around 2 to 5 pounds per feet. But usually buildings in Connecticut are structured to handle northeastern snow loads, although we haven't had a lot of that in the last 10 years. That is a lot more than 5 pounds per foot generally. Now, look, we've run into scenarios where folks have done some stuff that has impaired the structural integrity of their roof space. And so we do have to remediate that or just analyze that, with care. But that hasn't happened very frequently, especially in the northeastern area that we operate. And Connecticut is squarely down the fairway in that regard. So now the qualitative components of what makes a prospect ideal for this is really that they've got an interest in a passive income source. That's a key amount. That's a key component. But then the amount of that income source also tends to be a sticking point. Solar is not terribly energy dense, and so we're not talking about hundreds of dollars per foot per year here. So we have to consider that a customer that is looking for any dollar out of their stranded asset is worth their time. Now, these are not all or none. A customer could sort of qualify one of these characteristics and still be a great candidate for us to work with. But another one is that they value the optics of hosting solar on their roof in some way. Maybe their tenants will pay more in rent, and there's a lot of data available on that. Maybe they can have higher levels of customer satisfaction because their customers are looking for a renewably sourced product from whatever's going on below the roof. Those are areas where somebody may value having a no money down solar installation on their roof for the optics purposes. And then obviously, if they have a sustainability goal, this will assist with them in meeting that. Areas that we found success in this pitch to date has been, trying to focus on a customer's understanding of the fact that any amount of income that I get from my stranded asset is found money. And ROI is not a concept here because there's no investment being made by the customer. We put up all the capital expenditure. We invest all the capital. So the ROI for your customer is infinity, right? The denominator of the fraction is 0, it's infinity. The concept of a payback time doesn't exist because they're not laying out any cash. It's an immediate payback. And obviously there's a bonus that there's a positive environmental impact. Making money while impacting the environment beneficially maybe not be their corporate, in their corporate responsibility code or one of their initiatives that they put out there publicly, but guaranteed it's not going to hurt their brand. Basic value props that we've seen successful are, just turning that stranded rooftop into revenue. The passive aspect of this income is important for you to stress. We literally do not bother the customer when they host our project. If they want to be involved in terms of permitting us to go on site, we tend, our form documents require that we get their permission, but we do need to be able to service the asset that we own and operate on site. And obviously, supporting clean energy while you're maximizing the unused space of your property tends to be a valuable value proposition here as well. The steps to closure are not that complicated. It's 3 steps really. We do an initial consultation, try to figure out which of these value propositions the customer cares about, and we'll give them an overview of the program. Now, some of our partners like yourselves have taken that first step on, and we come to the conversation at step 2. We are happy to do step 1 with you. You want to just pass the contact over, we can do it without you. Our preference is to have you involved, and so that you are along for every step of the journey with us and your customer. But we are very flexible on how to get step 1 done. Step 2 is we'll do a full assessment and we'll deliver a written proposal. This is something the customer can put on the shelf and they can save. They can have it. It's our deliverable to them. It's for free. And we'll go through roof eligibility, structural eligibility, and then do an economic analysis for their avoided costs and their benefits in hosting that are above and beyond the rent, to the extent that there are any. And then we work with the customer to get through their decision-making process in step 3 here. Our agreements are form documents. These are small assets. And so there are simply areas that we cannot customize in these agreements, but we're not commercially unreasonable. Like if there's something that doesn't fit the customer's situation, we got to edit the document accordingly. You'll have my time and attention on that, our legal resources time and attention on that, and the entire team's time and attention on that. So you can rest assured that we'll customize where we can, and we'll always try to meet the customer where they are. That said, like if we price something a particular way and they're asking for something that changes underwriting, they just have to be aware that they may change the economics of the transaction overall. But this is a collaborative and iterative process, and depending on how easy your customer is, this could be a quick close or it could be a long close. We've had some of these drag on for 18 months. We've had some of these close in 3. It all depends on the willingness and the education level of every participant. In terms of your compensation, and I know some of you guys have already discussed this with Lauren and Amy, but just to get it out there, we tried to fit this into a structure that was familiar to our supply broker partners. So X amount of mils per megawatt hour of solar production or kilowatt hour of solar production. We generally ask our partners to set their rates similarly to how we work with you on the supply side. But that said, just bear in mind, whatever dollar you're taking out, maybe one less dollar available in rent for your customer. No different necessarily than a supply contract commission structure, but just keep that in mind that to get a deal done, sometimes there's flexibility you have to bring to bear here. And these are 20-year contracted revenue streams, which is a lot different than the 1 or 2-year contracts that you may be brokering regularly. Now, we can accelerate this, pay upfront for it. We do have an upfront component when we secure site control, and then the balance would be due at notice to proceed, some at notice to proceed and some upon commercial operations. That's COD. I'm using a couple of acronyms, so feel free to beat me up if I'm using too many. But notice to proceed is when everything's permitted. We have our NRES contract, we have an interconnection, and we're ready to go proceed with building it. And COD is commercial operations date. But by the time this thing is turning on and we're making money, you're making money, whether it's residually or upfront. And there's going to be a discount associated with the upfront payment depending on our cost of capital. That was a little fast, so I hope some of you were able to digest it. If you do have questions, let us know. But otherwise, Lauren, you want to bring us through our conclusion here?
Yeah, sure. Were we going to talk about some frequently asked questions, or?
I think we could hit that as soon as we just sort of cover the next steps here.
Okay, so we just want to thank you for getting on our first broker webinar. If you have any opportunities that you want us to look at, please send them over. We'll Amy and I will put them into the solar team. They'll turn it around usually that same week with a nice proposal, depending on what you need. We can play around a little bit with the numbers. It's definitely a collaboration there. And then next steps, just give us a call or contact broker support, and we'll take you through the opportunity.
And if you'd like, there's a link to our intake form. If you want to just keep this contact list, go right ahead and you can use that. All right, let's cover some FAQs. Let me pull them up. I know I talked a little bit about this during the presentation, but we do frequently have a customer that's a renter. But in some cases, they've got roof rights. So they can do things to the roof if they want. And they may have a long-dated lease, but maybe not the full tenor of our NRES commitment, for instance. So Bill, from an underwriting perspective and just our general approach here to underwriting these projects, how have we tackled that, and what's a good view on this one?
Well, if we're talking to a renter, the renter should have the rights to the roof for 20 years. Okay, I mean, that's what you're looking for. And if he doesn't have the right to the roof for 20 years, then we really got to do this with the building owner. I would stay away from the tenant.
So in some of those cases, we work directly with landlords.
Yeah.
And that has been helpful. So, not sure if there's a straightforward answer to this one, Bill, but I mean, I've been on a lot of calls with some of our partners and I've heard this question before. So I know this is probably something on everyone's mind. How old is too old of a roof?
Yeah, let me give a little color on this. It's not a question of roof age, but it's a question of roof condition. Now, if a roof is metal, it's got to be corrosion free and the securing hardware has to be in good condition. In other words, it has to be held down. If it's constructed with any other surface, that surface has to be in good condition and guaranteed by the builder or the last roof resurfacer, who's generally a contractor, for at least another 13 to 15 years from the date of the solar installation. And the purpose of this is to make sure that there's not likelihood that we're going to have to remove the solar panel installation or put a new roof on, because that could be very expensive and it destroys the economics of the project. So we're really looking to be able to get 20 years, if not more, out of the installation, but at least 20 years. And when I say 13 to 15, if we have 13 to 15 years, we know we're close. So we feel that, okay, so if there's some minor work that needs to be done to the roof, over time, we could probably deal with that. But you got to understand what we're looking for. We don't want to have to remove the solar installation.
Now, I'm sure everybody on the line has driven around and they've seen solar mounted on the ground as well as on the roof. Is there anything about the NRES program that restricts us to roofs? I mean, we've talked a lot about that today, Bill.
But the NRES program will allow ground-mounted installations. But in the case of a ground mount, it's kind of interesting how it works. If the ground mount can't produce more than the customer produces in their property at the site. So if it's just ground and no building, it's not good for the program. But if it's ground and there's a building there and he just wants to not put it on the roof but put it on the ground, then the size of the installation is limited by the load at the customer's meter. Okay.
So if it's a roof mounted system, do we need to know the customer's load?
No, for a roof mounted installation, we do not need to know that. And that's what makes it odd. But that was a change made in the project over the last year or year and a half. And so for a customer in Connecticut, we really don't need to know what the customer uses in order to design a rooftop installation. However, at some point during the process, we'll need a copy of a customer's bill for record purposes. That's it.
So I guess, Neil, from like an operations perspective, are there any, differences roof or ground that, we would want our partners to be cognizant of?
In terms of roof, I mean, we just, in both situations, you have to know the load that's going on at the customer's meter at the site. But with ground, age doesn't matter. With roof, it does. So we just have to take a look at it and get more information on that.
I guess we just need to make sure we know who's cutting the grass. So I guess, Connecticut's got some urban and suburban areas and rural areas. It's a pretty diversified state in that regard. Is there any benefits or drawbacks to one type of area or another for this, Bill?
Yeah, let me try to describe this a bit. Urban areas have an advantage in that adequate utility electrical capacity required for a system to connect is more likely to exist at a location. However, when it's an urban area, multi-story buildings, which are common, generally have more roof-mounted equipment, which limits the space for solar panels. So if you look at a multi-story building, you'll normally find on a roof a lot of equipment. The bigger the building, the more equipment, occupies that roof. So that's a problem. When you're talking about suburban areas, they tend to be the best to look at, in my opinion. Areas just outside the city, because hosting capacity tends to be there, and the buildings seem to be a little bit of a lower profile. My favorite building is like a one-story, factory or something like that, obviously, where the costs are kept down, but you don't have to go so high. But if somebody has a 50-story building, that's not going to work. Rural areas are sometimes difficult because hosting capacity is only available. When I say hosting capacity, that's what's needed to hook up the unit. It's not available in the quantity necessary in all areas. But I wouldn't restrict myself from looking at either urban, suburban, or rural areas. If you have a customer that's interested, we'll take a look at it.
So it's really site specific.
Yeah, it is. And what I do, I mean, the first thing I look at when I get a customer like that is I look at the hosting capacity to see if there's an opportunity to hook it up. But it's not just hosting capacity at the site. It's possible that there's no hosting capacity at the site, but 2 blocks away there may be. So you have to look at that, and of course that increases the cost a bit to get capacity from 2 blocks away. But those costs tend to be fairly reasonable, and that's why we want to look at everything that makes sense to us.
So to do that preliminary screening, do you need anything other than just an address?
An address is sufficient for that. I can't think of anything else I would need to do initial screening.
Good to know. So relative to the other New England states where we underwrite projects, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, et cetera, how does Connecticut rank? Because I think a lot of our partners on the line today probably have customers that are across various New England state lines.
Yeah, I would consider Connecticut ranked close second after Massachusetts. I find the Massachusetts incentives to be a little more lucrative. In Connecticut, we find that projects with installations covering about 25,000 square feet or more of usable roof surface, these work best due to an increasing likelihood that installations from this coverage area are more likely to be accepted in that process, as Gabe mentioned before, because it is a lottery process. And I think Gabe went through this. I don't want to recover that, but no matter what it is, you have a project, the customer's interested, we'll look at it. Now, many times what we've done is it may be a larger roof, but we find that the best economics are by limiting the installation size so we can enter it into the small program. And what I do is I'll look at the economics in the larger program, determine what the bid will be because we have historical information on the bid prices. And then I'll take that and I'll then look at compressing that installation to see what the potential benefit is for the broker and also for the company.
Now, I guess it's worth noting that in that case, there's always some future use for the open space.
Yeah.
So I guess once we do get a lease signed, we've done all that screening, we find that there's hosting capacity, and we go ahead and get site control through one of our partners' customers. Neil, what does that mean for our likelihood of getting a contract in the NRES auction?
Well, the NRES auction is it happens twice a year, and there's no guarantee that you're going to be selected. If it's a larger bid that you're putting in, then it's a bidding process, and you may not get it based on the price. Anything below the 200 kW threshold is a random lottery selection, and so there's no reason why we can't keep submitting it, and we will eventually get it. But it could just make the process take a while. Usually, I mean, everything we've put in, we've gotten selected in the auction with no more than, I believe, 3 attempts.
It's helpful color. So I guess also once that site control is secured, the lease is signed. Aside from the NRES auction, what are the other steps that happen, Neil?
Well, I mean, after the lease is signed and after the NRES auction happens, then if we are selected, then we move on to the tariff agreement with the utility, and we have to clear all of the interconnection hurdles with the utility and begin construction. And that process could take anywhere from I would say 8 months to a year and a half to finish, depending on the complexity of the install.
So do you ever start the interconnection process before you get an NRES award?
Yes, we do. Yes, in as many instances as we can, we like to get that going now. I mean, even if you started early, that could still take months to clear. But
now, I guess it's worth noting that there's specifics of a layout that have to get ironed out at some point. That's not part of the interconnection submission, that's electrical drawings, but is the customer a participant in that layout process and has some say over it?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I guess another frequently asked question that we've fielded that, I mean, I'll let Bill answer, but my face is probably previewing it. If the customer wants to consume solar on site to reduce power costs, and it's in Connecticut, do they have an option to do that, Bill?
Yeah, there is an option to do it in Connecticut. In Connecticut, there are two options. One is called bio. Well, everything produced goes right back to the utility. And that is used in 100% of all medium to large projects that I've seen get submitted and accepted. In the smaller category, probably about 90% are in that category, the bio category. But what and we in Catalyst, we don't get involved in the other category, which is netting, where basically you're consuming it's affecting your energy bill, because we understand how the program works, and there's no financial benefit that I can see at all in doing this, what we call behind the meter through netting. So everything we do is in front of the meter. It makes it simpler, and every project gets awarded, instead of a customer having reduced electricity billing cost, they get, a regular payment.
Revenue.
Yeah, from Catalyst. So is it a utility bill reduction? Well, if your utility bill is, $5,000 a year and you're getting, 10,000 from Catalyst, that's good. Yeah. You can look at it as a reduction. Okay, but it's not direct. And we actually enjoy, we like doing it this way because it's less complex, and it does nothing to degrade the results.
And the customer doesn't have to give us their financial.
We haven't had but a few customers say, hey, I would like this behind the meter, and then when you talk to them about it, they understand, okay, there's no benefit to doing it. Somebody must have told them that, but it's not true.
Now, if there's some instance in which they've got like a sustainability goal they have to meet, like a scope 2 or 3 emissions requirement or something like that, there are ways you could construe this as participating in additionality. So if any of you guys want to get into the sustainability talk with me, like, let me know. We can get into that. But in general, it's just the program was structured to be an in front of the meter program.
Right.
So,
yep.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for listening. I think we're at time. Ketel, is that the right point to wrap?
That's correct. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate the time today. If you have any other questions, please let us know.
Thank you.